Filing for Social Security at 62 seems smart. You get the check sooner. You stop worrying sooner. You finally exhale. Until you see the trough years math. Here's what no one tells you. There's a stretch of retirement, usually between age 62 and 70, where your income looks fine on paper but quietly runs thin in real life. Financial planners call it the trough years. It's the gap between the moment you stop earning a paycheck and the moment your guaranteed income finally catches up to your actual cost of living. And filing early, the thing that feels safest, is often what carves that trough deeper. Let's slow down and look at the real numbers, not the rounded-off version you hear at the barber shop. If your full retirement age is 67, filing at 62 locks in a permanent reduction of about 30%. Not for a year, not until some magic birthday, forever. That reduction follows you through every cost of living adjustment for the rest of your life because those adjustments are applied to a smaller base. Now, here's the part that catches people off guard. The first few years of retirement often look deceptively comfortable. You've got some savings, maybe a small pension, that early Social Security check on top of it. It feels like enough. So you relax, you travel a little, you help a grandchild with tuition. Nothing reckless, just normal life. But normal life has a cost curve, and around year 6 or 7, that curve starts to climb, right as your reduced Social Security check is doing the opposite. Healthcare costs rise, long-term care becomes a real conversation, not a hypothetical one, and the buffer you were counting on has already been spent smoothing out those early comfortable years. That's the trough. It's not a crisis at 62. It's a slow squeeze that shows up at 68, 70, 72, right when you have the least flexibility left to fix it. Think about Bill and Susan. They filed the moment they turned 62 because everyone around them was doing the same thing. For the first 5 years, it worked. They paid off the truck, they took the trip to see their daughter's new house. Then Susan needed a procedure that Medicare only partially covered. Then property taxes went up 2 years in a row. Their fixed income wasn't fixed anymore. It was shrinking against a rising cost of living, and there was no lever left to pull because that lever, the decision to delay filing, only exists once.
Here's the insight that changes everything. Delaying Social Security isn't about being patient for its own sake. It's about buying yourself a larger, permanent base before inflation starts working against you instead of for you. For every year you wait past your full retirement age, up to age 70, your benefit grows by roughly 8%. That's not a return you can find in a savings account. That's not a return most investments guarantee. It's locked-in, government-backed growth, and it compounds against a bigger number every single year you hold off. So if the math is this clear, why do so many people still file at 62? Because the trough years don't announce themselves early. The stress of an uncertain paycheck feels immediate. The stress of a shrinking benefit at 75 feels distant, almost theoretical. Our brains are wired to solve the problem in front of us, not the one waiting 7 years down the road. That's not a character flaw. That's just how people make decisions under uncertainty. But it means the easiest choice and the smartest choice are often pointing in opposite directions. So what's the alternative if you can't just wait and hope for the best? The real strategy isn't stubborn delay no matter what. It's bridging. You use other assets, a taxable account, a part-time consulting gig, even a temporary reduction in spending to cover your expenses in those early years, so Social Security can keep growing untouched in the background. Think of it less like refusing income and more like protecting your biggest, safest asset from being cashed in too early. This is where the trough years actually become an opportunity instead of a threat. If you map out your expenses year by year from the day you retire to age 70, you can often see exactly how much of a bridge you need. Sometimes it's smaller than people expect. A part-time role 2 days a week, a modest draw from savings. Even delaying 2 or 3 years instead of the full 8 can meaningfully change your lifetime income.
The households who avoid the trough aren't the ones with the most money. They're the ones who saw the shape of it coming and built a bridge before they needed one. Let's talk about the subsidy angle too, because this connects to more than just your monthly check. Filing early and taking on more taxable income sooner than necessary can also push you into a higher Medicare premium bracket down the line, especially if you're drawing down retirement accounts at the same time. That's a separate conversation, but it's tied to the same root cause. Big financial decisions made under short-term pressure tend to create long-term costs that don't show up until years later, when it's too late to undo them. Here's the recap, because this matters too much to leave fuzzy. Filing at 62 isn't wrong for everyone. Some people have health concerns that make early filing the right call. Some people simply need the income now, and that's a real valid constraint. But if you're filing at 62 purely out of habit, or because it's what your neighbor did, or because waiting feels uncomfortable, you may be trading a small window of early comfort for a much longer window of financial strain, right in the years you'll have the least ability to recover. The trough years are real. They are predictable, and they are largely avoidable if you see them coming early enough to build a bridge instead of a gap. Before you make this decision, sit down and map your actual expenses from the day you retire to age 70, not estimates, real numbers. Because the difference between filing at 62 and filing at 67 isn't just a bigger check later, it's whether your retirement gets harder or easier as the years go on. Let's walk through how to actually build that bridge, step by step, because knowing the trough exists doesn't help you if you don't know what to do about it. Step 1. Write down your fixed monthly expenses. Housing, insurance, utilities, groceries, medications. This is your floor. This is the number that doesn't move no matter what. Step 2. Write down your flexible expenses. Travel, dining out, gifts to family. This is where you have room to adjust if the bridge years get tight. Step 3, add up every income source that isn't Social Security. Pensions, rental income, part-time work, dividends, required minimum distributions once you hit that age. This is your bridge material. Step 4, compare the bridge material to the floor. If the bridge covers the floor comfortably, you likely have more room to delay than you think. If it doesn't, that's not a failure, that's information. It tells you exactly how many years of delay are realistic, even if it's not the full 8. This is where the SSA's own online calculator becomes useful. Go to ssa.gov, log into your account, and pull your actual estimated benefit at 62, at your full retirement age, and at 70. Seeing your specific numbers, not a generic example, changes how real this decision feels. Most people are surprised by how large the gap actually is once they see their own figures instead of a hypothetical. Now, let's talk about the part almost nobody mentions, the survivor benefit. If you're married, your filing age doesn't just affect your own check. It affects what your spouse receives if you pass away first. A higher earner who files early locks in a lower survivor benefit for their spouse permanently. That's the quiet cost that outlives the original decision. Susan, in Bill's case, didn't just lose out on Bill's growth. If Bill had passed away first, she would have inherited his reduced benefit instead of a larger one for the rest of her life. That's not a small detail. For a lot of couples, that single fact changes the entire calculation. So when you're mapping the bridge, don't just map it for one person. Map it for the household, and specifically for whichever spouse is likely to live longer, statistically speaking. That's usually the lower earner, and that's usually the one who benefits most from the higher earner delaying. Let's also address the fear sitting underneath all of this, because it's real, and it deserves to be named directly. The fear is this: what if I delay, and then something happens and I never get to use those larger checks at all? That fear is valid. Nobody can guarantee their own lifespan. But here's the way to think about it clearly without letting fear make the decision for you. Social Security isn't just a savings account you're trying to maximize the payout from. It's longevity insurance. It's the one part of your retirement income that keeps paying no matter how long you live. And it's the one part that keeps pace with inflation through cost of living adjustments. You're not betting on living to 95. You're protecting yourself in case you do, because that's exactly the scenario where a bigger permanent check matters most, and it's exactly the scenario your other savings are least equipped to handle. If the idea of running out of money at 85 or 90 scares you more than the idea of a slightly leaner few years in your late 60s, the math is telling you something. Delaying isn't the risky choice. It's the choice that removes risk from the years you have the least control over. There's one more concept worth understanding before you decide, and it's called the break-even age. This is the age at which the total money you'd receive from filing later catches up to and then passes the total money from filing early. For most people, that break-even point lands somewhere in the late 70s to early 80s. If you file at 62 instead of 70, you get 8 extra years of smaller checks first. But because the larger check keeps compounding through cost of living adjustments every year after that, the total lifetime amount from delaying eventually overtakes the early filing total, and it keeps growing the gap every year you live past that point. This is why break-even age matters so much in this conversation. It reframes the decision away from a simple question of when you get money and toward a real question of how long you expect to need income. If your family has a history of living into their 90s, the break-even math strongly favors delaying. If your family history points to a shorter lifespan, that same math might point you toward filing earlier. Neither answer is wrong. What's wrong is not doing the math at all and just defaulting to the earliest possible age because it's the one everyone talks about first. Now, a word of caution, because balance matters here too. If you have a serious health condition that makes a shorter lifespan more likely, or if you genuinely have no other way to cover your basic expenses, filing early isn't a mistake. It's the correct decision for your specific situation. This isn't about following a rule blindly. It's about running your own numbers instead of copying what a neighbor or a coworker did, because their health, their spouse's age, and their other assets are almost never identical to yours. Here's the recap, because this matters too much to leave fuzzy. Filing at 62 isn't wrong for everyone. Some people have health concerns that make early filing the right call. Some people simply need the income now, and that's a real valid constraint. But if you're filing at 62 purely out of habit, or because it's what your neighbor did, or because waiting feels uncomfortable, you may be trading a small window of early comfort for a much longer window of financial strain right in the years you'll have the least ability to recover. The trough years are real, they are predictable, and they are largely avoidable if you see them coming early enough to build a bridge instead of a gap. Before you make this decision, sit down and map your actual expenses from the day you retire to age 70, not estimates. Real numbers, because the difference between filing at 62 and filing at 67 isn't just a bigger check later, it's whether your retirement gets harder or easier as the years go on. And there's one more document tied directly to this decision, a document most Social Security representatives never hand you unless you specifically ask for it. It lays out your break-even age, your survivor benefit implications, and your full delayed retirement credit schedule, all in one place. We're covering exactly what's in that document and how to request it next.